Hey everyone, welcome to another recording session of the Polite Society podcast. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Your broadcast team tonight is going to be Charlie Cook of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, Amanda Suffecool of Eye on the Target Radio, and Rob Morse of the Slow Facts blog. Rob, it looks like you're going to do one of those pirouette things when you do that. You're going to spin around and,
My studio is too small for much pirouette, so
yeah.
Thanks for the suggestion. We'll take it under advisement.
There you go. I suppose I could do one of these things. I could get my, see if I could do this. Bring my video
on screen into something bizarre.
Do the pirouette there. There you go.
I'm getting seasick.
All right.
Try this at home, friends.
Exactly. We're paid professionals here. We're trained professionals. Anyway, let me get. I
love it when I'm the normal one.
Does that happen very often?
No.
I need to get social media hooked up here before we start recording, and that takes just a minute. I want to remind everybody that is watching that one of the new features, and Twitter reached out and dragged me back to 2010. Actually, I had some very knowledgeable people say, hey, look, with social media doing what it's doing, you need to get on as many social media platforms as you can, get active on as many social media platforms as you can, and pull from as many social media platforms as you can. So, if you're on Twitter and you want to be a part of the show, use hashtag PSPodcast. And if you tweet with hashtag PSPodcast, I will see that, and I can get your comment up on the screen. You can be a part of the live show. All right, let me go to show notes. I do believe I am ready to go on my end. Team, are we all ready to go on for everybody else here? All right, looks like we are ready to fly. Let's do this, and let me look over here, and we are going to have Masada Ayub firing off in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, March the 28th, 2022. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show we'll talk about new gun owners who walk into a business that's posted no guns allowed.
I'm Amanda Suffecool, and we will talk about Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who vetoed legislation that would have required county clerks to keep processing concealed pistol licenses during declared emergencies. Think about that.
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about a robbery at a cannabis store. So climb aboard,
strap in,
and hang on.
Episode 618 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night at 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, and that means it's time for another Polite Society podcast. Rob, it's been long enough that you've been on. I think we have to make you an honorary red shirt, dude. What's been up with you since the last time you've been on the air?
I had a wonderful vacation. My wife planned it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We got back late last week. Since then, I recorded and released a new episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and I've written a few articles for AmmoLand. Some of them are up already. Sounds like I'm back at work. How about you, Amanda?
Well, Rob and I, the other Rob, not this Rob and I had an amazing show on Sunday. It turned into government overreach, we'll just say. So we've pretty much convinced him that he's going to start his own political party called the Davy Crockett Party, and how he's going to consider running for office. I'm not sure America is ready for that. So, and then this past week I went to the Ohio State House to hear the governor and the State of a State address. And the cool part was I took my sign that says I am my own first responder, and I got multiple state reps to pose with the gun sign that says that. How cool is that?
Cool. Are you?
Charlie, how about you?
Go ahead, Rob.
No, Charlie, I want to hear.
Sorry, I listened to Eye on the Target radio last night, and I have determined that if Rob Campbell is going to run on the Davy Crockett Party, I will be more than willing to make a gungram of his theme song from the TV show. So if he's up for it, I'm up for doing it. I'm like wondering how we can change the lyrics around, maybe something like that. Could be fun.
We gotta get a supply of coonskin caps. We've got to.
I was trying to figure out where I could get one, and I could not come up with an answer. Other than that, I had a couple courses over the weekend at some local gun stores, and I did a live show that I've been doing with Matt Mallory. We did a show last week with Rob Pincus, and we actually have a show coming up tomorrow night with Rick Ector. But that's what I've been up to. Keep myself very busy. Paul, how about yourself? What's happening with the bullets?
Oh man, well we just wrapped one up. I know you're aware of that one because you were on it with me. They have been just totally consuming my time. Trying to keep them filled up and trying to keep topics going is an absolute full-time job. And that and trying to plan for coming up in just over a month, we've got a huge road trip where we're going to be doing the Mingle, and then we're going to be going straight from there down to the NRA show. And I'm assembling a mini broadcast studio. Basically, I've got a smaller version of everything that I'm broadcasting with right now that I'm going to be able to set up and take with me so that you will not notice the difference in quality when I'm on the road. The last piece of that should arrive tomorrow. I will be setting it up in my living room over this coming weekend, and I'm hoping that once I test everything that I'll be ready to go, and I can broadcast. I can set up in a hotel room, and you won't be able to notice that there's a difference other than maybe internet speed from the home to where I'm broadcasting on the road. So that's what has been filling my time, is trying to get everything assembled for a mobile studio and trying to keep the normal broadcast running is mostly what I've been doing.
Does everybody else have this picture of a little kid? Remember how the hobos used to have a stick over their shoulder with a little bandana and a little sack on the end of it? Except that's got to hold a mobile studio when Paul runs away and broadcasts from strange locations.
I'm trying to picture that he's got that while he's riding his motorcycle from South Dakota to Florida.
When you draw that mental picture, I'm more the Steve Martin and the jerk wearing his robe, carrying his thermos in his chair. But you could go with your cute little picture if you want to. My mental picture is completely different.
Now, I'm going to have to say, I have taken measurements. This will not fit on an FJR 1300, so it's going to have to be a Toyota RAV4 that this all fits into to go to Georgia, then to Houston, and then back here to Sioux Falls. So, no motorcycle trip through the country, although it would be absolutely fantastically fun, is not going to happen this spring. And Dana, let me get this in. Dana says, challenge accepted. How many social media platforms can I post from in one show? There you go.
We'll find out.
We'll keep a tally.
We're like 1, 2, 3.
And Amanda was just, she proved it works. Check out the amazing shows amongst other podcast offerings. There you go. Polite Society Podcast live right now. There you go. So it does work. We know it works. Let's do this. We need to head off to our first break, and I really want to get to this conversation. Amanda and I were talking a little bit about this yesterday. The conversation we're going to have after the break is this. We have 24 states that, as of this July, or about this July, 24 states will be permitless carry. There are still some businesses that are no guns allowed. What do you do when you don't need a permit to carry in your state, but all of a sudden, whoops, the grocery store says, I don't want your gun here? What's the deal? So we're going to talk about what each of us do and what we suggest you do when you come across no gun signs. Hang on, everybody. We're going to do that. We'll be right back right after we hear from ACLDN.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Welcome back. This would be the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation if we had a guest. Since we don't, we're going to have a discussion. As I alluded to before we went to break, there are 24 states that this year will have constitutional carry, or permitless carry, as I prefer to say it. If it were constitutional carry, I could carry a Glock 18 openly anywhere in the state, including on school grounds. That's constitutional carry. As it is, it's permitless. So anyway, and Charlie and I covered that on the bullet. If you didn't catch that, go over to the Polite Society page and you'll get the changes, what makes the difference between constitutional and permitless carry. But anyway, I'm going to start with you, Charlie. If you're in free America, I know you have to make a stretch for that for Massachusetts, but you're traveling through the country, you're in free America, you're carrying, and you see a no gun sign on a business that you were about to go in. What does Charlie Cook do?
Well, I'll tell you, I had this incident a couple years ago. I was down in Nashville, Tennessee, filming some shows on a road trip, and Tennessee is free America. I was going into an establishment that had a sign. I pulled out handgunlaw.us on my phone. It said that I could not carry in places where the sign is posted, and it does have the force of law. So I went back to my car, grumbling the entire way that this was a bunch of baloney and it's a crock of cheese. And I sat in my car until the person that was parked behind me got out of their car. Then I took out my carry gun, I unloaded it, I locked it in a safe, I put it in my car, and I grumbled all the way when I walked back to the restaurant. I had something to eat. I grumbled back to my car. When I got to my car, I made sure no one was looking. I took my gun out, loaded it back up, and put it back in the holster. So when I'm in free America and the signs are there and they have the force of law, I do obey them.
All right. Rob, you are in free America. Louisiana is almost constitutional carry. Or are they now? No, they're not.
We had to override a governor's veto, and we failed to do that. By the way, the Republican who was promised a political patronage seat was never approved by the Senate committee to grant that seat. So we have a long memory down here. But to answer your question, Charlie, Paul, Amanda, been there, done that. I was at a store in Texas, and I'd already looked up the laws for posted sign, and I went, not only is that not the right sign, it's not on every door. I walked in. Now, I do know the additional issues about the law. If I were observed to have been carrying, and they said, Mr. Morse, we'd like you to leave. Now, if I stay after they've asked that, I'm trespassing. That is typically the penalty. Oh, you're charged with trespassing if they ask you to leave and you don't. That's not true in every state.
All right. Trying to look for the right button. There we go.
There it is.
Amanda, you are, in July you will be in Free America. And you travel all throughout the country. You and I have met up all throughout the country at different venues.
We're going to get a reputation, Paul.
I'm telling you. What does Amanda do when she was going to go into a business and sees a no gun sign?
There's so many things, but what I do is take action. So I have to tell you about the meatloaf. We went to my husband has a favorite restaurant for fast food, and that's Boston Market, and he loves the meatloaf at Boston Market. And so we get out of the car, we're going into town, we go to Boston Market, we get out of the car, we walk up to the door, and there's a darn sign on the door. And he turns and he looks at me, and he looks like a little 6-year-old, okay,
Oh, shucks.
Where are we going now? Because there's a sign on the door. And I said, no, it's fine. So I went back to the car, and I disarmed, and then we went back in, and then I proceeded to ask the manager, who looked like he was 12, why there was a sign on the door. And he told me it was state law. And I told him no, it wasn't. And then he told me that it was company policy. And I was like, well, then I'd like the name and number and contact information for your boss. And so I proceeded we had his meatloaf, and then I went out to the car and I started calling around. And since he said it was company policy, I called Boston Markets in other states to find out if it really was company policy. Then I called this dude's boss and was told by that boss that it was company policy. And then I told him no, he needed to call this guy in Texas and this guy in Florida, who were managers of Boston Market stores that did not have that policy. And then we went home. And a week and a half later, we go back into town, swing by the Boston Market, and the sign is gone. So individuals can make a difference. And so my husband still can have meatloaf if he wants it because of that. But and that really is what drove today's conversation. Not to hog everything, but the local grocery store, because of Ohio's constitutional carry passage, just put up a sign. And a friend of mine got angry about it, and so he was like, I'm going to write a letter. And I said, that's great. And I said, you want to talk about that? He's like, well, you can talk about it if you want. And I said, on my show, that's not really that big a deal unless you get others to write a letter too. He's like, I could do that. So he started to coordinate others. Then a quick Google search, because this is the Meyer with a J grocery store. With a quick Google search, found out that they had an employee who was throwing feces on customers. They had a couple knifings where customers were knifed, where employees were knifed, where some guy was locked in a car and set on fire. There's just a little bit of issues periodically in their stores or their store parking lots. And so we started another letter writing campaign about the fact that we are our own first responders, and when you stop us, yet you can't protect us from crime, what are you going to do there, Mr. What's his name? Mr. Rick Keys, the president and CEO of Myers Grocery Store. So.
Now, you do remember the political activism blueprint for this. Okay, you sent that in. Then
right.
You wanted to, if you had whatever letter that was, fax it. Then post it on social media.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You want for each letter you want, I want to get the bang for the buck.
Right. Well, and they have a Facebook page.
Oh.
So we instant messaged it. So it got mailed, it got emailed, it got faxed, and it got personal messaged to their Facebook page. And then we posted it, and then we posted all the links to all the crimes so others could get creative with the different various letters to send. So, and then we started to post it to friends that live in those states to say, hey, did you know? Because, did you know? You know, that whole adage of I told two friends, who told two friends, who told two friends.
Good for you.
Get this comment in here real quick. George Geller says, our Boston market closed. Now their parking lot is occupied by cars waiting for the In-N-Out drive-through.
I have to say that I was just in my husband's a snowbird, so I was just in the town with the Boston market, and ours is also now closed, at least that one. So I don't know if they all are, or if he just can't go to the east and have meatloaf.
Sioux Falls doesn't have one anymore either. Now it's a sushi place. So
he wouldn't eat there.
I won't eat there.
Well, okay.
So.
By the way, what you just described is classic. I was just reading today about how Bloomberg is essentially failing. Yes, he bought millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of political ads. He's got hundreds of paid people beating the anti-gun drum, and he's beaten by an army of Amandas and Charlies and Pauls who go, that's inconvenient. I'm gonna let my friends know. And we beat the daylights out of them. They were surprised when they thought they took down Wayne LaPierre and therefore the NRA would fail. You don't understand. The NRA is carrying the flag. They're not doing the work. We are. Right.
The NRA is the laser pointer and we're all the cats. You know?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you turn into the Polite Society podcast.
There you go.
Dana commented, a member of the Meyer family is the U.S. rep from the Grand Rapids area in Michigan. And George says, maybe Grand Rapids ain't all that grand no more.
Maybe. Well,
it's just Rapids.
There's a little bit of that. But if anybody's got some spare time, you can go to, it's on my page, on my Facebook page, and you can find all the information to contact Myers and a couple of sample letters because, you know, they need to hear from you.
Yeah.
Do you remember those little business cards that we were handed out at GRPC, and the guy goes, "This is online."
I was going to go to that. Yeah.
Go there, Paul.
Yeah. Several years ago, there were business cards that were circulating around when we went to Gun Rights Policy Conference. I remember them being handed out when I went to the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Orlando, and we all were given permission to copy these, go have them printed, whatever. But when you come up on a business that has a no gun sign, just use some cellophane tape this to the door. Basically, the card said, you would have gotten my business, but you don't want me or my firearm. And I think they were a very effective tool. I took some. I don't have any anymore because I used them. But and honestly, there are very, very, very few businesses in Sioux Falls that don't allow. There are very few no gun signs around here.
Well, you know, in Ohio, when we passed our conceal carry, we had open carry for years and years. We passed conceal carry, and some people lost their minds. So the the U.S. Association of Car Dealerships, or some whatever their official name is, they sent stickers to all the car dealerships telling them, well, implying that it was the law that they had to post those on the door. It said no guns inside the dealerships. It wasn't the law, but they made this implication, and so they did. So my husband, his hobby is to look at new cars. Mm-hmm. He's a car guy. He loves to look at new cars, go to the dealership, talk to everybody. I'm like, it's like going to the dentist, pull out my wisdom teeth. It's the most horrible thing. But periodically I go along just because I'm the good wife. And so I started to say, if there's a gun sign, then sorry, I can't go in. And so we would play this kind of bait and switch thing. Hey, dude, he really would buy that Mercedes, but I'm not going in your building. So, And they're like, well, what are you afraid of? And I'm like, I'm not afraid of anything, but I'm telling you that I'm offended.
Yes.
And so there you go. And so
you offended one of your customers.
Exactly. And it was, and he likes to look at the high end stuff. It's funny watching their little faces.
Wow. I don't want to say anything good about my home state here, but the no gun signs do not have the force of law. So when I've gone to places and they have the no gun signs, it's very much like the Blues Brothers band at Bob's Country Bunker, where I'm like, yeah, these are requests, they mean nothing. and I go right through. And I went to a concert with my son, and I gave him his ticket, and I said, hey, bud, here's your ticket. I've got my ticket. If we get separated, I'm going to have to go to the car. And he's like, well, why would we get separated? And I'm like, they have a metal detector, bud. I'm not going to make it through. So we got up there, no problems. Nobody wanted me. There was no metal detector to walk through. They scanned my ticket. We went in, and everything was fine. And on the flip side, I went to a concert one time with my girlfriend and her kids and my kids, and they were wanding people. So I took out my keys, and they wanted me, and I took out my change, and they wanted me, and then I took out a knife, and they freaked out a little bit. Then they wanted me again, and I took out my other knife, and then all I had left was spare ammo in my pocket. And so they wanted me the last time, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to, I've got a license to carry, and I'm currently doing so. The metal detector's going to go off one more time. They called over a Boston police. He's like, what's going on here? And I'm like, I've got a carry permit, and I'm currently doing so. And he's like, are you a police officer? And I'm like, oh, if he asks for a badge, the answer is no. So I had to, it seemed like a mile I had to walk back to the car to put my stuff away. And then I went in with a Kubaton and everything.
It's crazy, some of this. And, well, I want to read you something that the Myers store sent to our friend Craig Fritz. Here's their quote. The signs were added to our front door to better convey our corporate policy, which asks customers to not carry in our stores. While we respect the protected rights of all of our customers and team members, we want to ensure that the shopping environment is safe and welcoming for everyone. So their environment is safe and welcoming.
Including for the crazy person who is going to go in there and open fire and doesn't care about their no gun signs.
Does that sign have force of law?
Yeah.
It does.
Because in Ohio, the sign could be made out of toilet paper and still have meaning. So it's not like you have to post code or anything. And they can almost, as long as it's on every door, they can almost, hide it in the verbiage if they want to. I mean, there's one at a mall that's got a not a Ferris wheel, it's got a carousel. And it says no smoking, no spitting, no loitering, no whatever, and then no guns. It's just kind of blended in the middle of the blobby paragraph of no's, right? And yet it still has. In that case, though, they didn't post every door. So it's a little inconvenient. You got to go use the door clear to the right, but oh well.
We're up on the break. Let me get a couple comments in here, and then we do need to run to break. Richard over on the Facebook side says, Alabama, Ohio, and Indiana passed constitutional carry. Which state will be next? I believe there are 2 states that are going to do it yet this year. Georgia, I believe, is going to get it done. Look for that later this week, look for that this week. They have to be done by April 1st in the Georgia legislature. The state law says the legislature must adjourn by April 1st. So that's going to happen, I believe, and it's going to happen this week. Look for Nebraska to do it next week. And Nebraska, next Monday, our guest for Polite Society is going to be Trish. My brain is not working right now.
Okay, Trish. Good old Trish from Nebraska.
Trish from Nebraska Firearms.
Yes, Trish from Nebraska Firearms Owners Association is going to be our guest next Monday night on Polite Society. And next week, my understanding is when the bill that has permitless carry for Nebraska is going to finally come up in front of the Senate for its final debate. Then I want to get 2 more comments in here. I know I said 2, but I'm going to make it a total of 3. Daryl says, most of the time I ignore no gun sign. What people don't know won't hurt them. And Daryl, I have no problem with that as long as if in your state the no gun signs, or whatever state you're in, no gun signs do not hold the force of law. And you can find that out by going to handgunlaw.us. There are other websites or apps that say they do that, but I trust handgunlaw.us.
Now, let's talk about force of law for a minute. So it says it's against the law, but at what level is it against the law? In Ohio, literally, it is punishable by $250 fine and up to 90 days in jail. The same as speeding. So, it's still considered force of law, but it's not a felony, and it doesn't get to be a felony until, like Rob Morse says, you say hell no, I won't go when someone asks you to leave.
And even then, that may or may not be a felony depending on your state.
Okay.
You're trespassing.
Well, actually,
get off my lawn.
I was told if you have a gun and you refuse to leave, then you're almost holding them hostage.
Wow, that's a little drastic.
You could sit there and say, I ordered, would you like to make my order to go so I can take the food, or are you just going to throw it out? I'm leaving. We're just negotiating how and when, and I'll do whatever you say. Do you want to throw the food out? I'll tell you, you're going to leave it outside? What's going to happen?
Get a basket. You can toss it to me outside the door.
Right.
George says if the sign were made out of toilet paper, it would actually be good for something.
There you go, George. I like that.
Thank you. That's how he thinks.
Dana says Meyer's corporate policy that I found says no open carry. I'll have to check my local store for signs. And George also came up with, are the Oscars a no-gun zone? They had some violence there. Well, they had, if you ask me, it was, let's face it, they're actors, okay?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, we are late for break. Before we get to break, I want to tell you about the Self-Defense Radio Network. There are 15, and we haven't updated the website in a while, but there are 15 shows up there that you can see that are on the Self-Defense Radio Network. You can see Rob's Self-Defense Gun Stories. Down here is Amanda's Eye on the Target Radio, Survival and Basic Badassery. And by the way, what a great name for a podcast, isn't it? Lots of great shows. Unload and Show Clear is up there. Firearms Chat is up there. Armed Lutheran Radio. All your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. You can listen right off the website, or if you prefer to subscribe, you can get the subscription information right there as well. Please go check it out at sdrn.us. All right, folks, we are going to go ahead and step aside to break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We'll be right back right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
And welcome back. This is continuing the discussion segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. We're talking about no gun zones, no gun-free zones or gun-free businesses in the era of permitless carry. I want to talk a little bit about most states that have permitless carry, and there are now 24, soon to be at 25, maybe 26. Most states that have permitless carry, the law is if you have a business that says no guns allowed, the signs are kind of a guideline. If you go in and you're asked to leave, you must leave. Where you run into trouble if they say we want you to leave and you don't, that is when you're breaking the law. That's called trespassing. That's kind of a rule of thumb. But again, check your state, because I know that's true of South Dakota. I know it's true of Texas. I don't know of every state, though.
Paul, here's why I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. I understand your concern. All of a sudden, grandma can carry. People are unlikely to pat grandma down to find out if she's carrying, so that's one reason we're not going to have the problem. The other is that when we stopped taxing people, hey, you remember that concealed carry course, and then your fingerprint fee, and then all those forms, and then you had to send it in? We're not doing that anymore. They have more time and more money. We found out that they took more firearms classes. So what we need to do as instructors is up our game a little bit. You're here for your you're not here for your permit. Well, okay, pay attention, because this is still important.
Okay, let me we got wow. Let me get
wow.
Yeah, let me get this up.
Is that like a Whoopi?
Where's Dana at now?
Yeah. Well, no, this is Cowboy Hillbilly off the YouTube side. Small bad news in Georgia. The Rules Committee are dragging their feet on constitutional carry. Jeff Mullis, David Ralston, and the other rhino weasels. Okay. I do know they have to be wrapped up by April 1st. I remember that from my research last week. So if you live in Georgia, get a hold of the Rules Committee and let them know you expect this out of them.
I would also suggest you call up the chairman of the Republican Party in Georgia and say, remember how I used to donate? It's not happening. You guys get none of my money. I may give to individual candidates, but the party just got cut off. Worked in Texas. It's worked other states.
So you call the state chairman, maximize your calls. Call the state chairman and then call the county chairman.
There you go.
Boom.
Because they've got some pull.
All right. Amanda, real quick, Amanda, Susan's been very busy. She just sent me this.
So that's for the Davy Crockett party that's in touch with their feminine side.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The king of the wild frontier, and it's a whole different wild.
Yes. That it would be a wild frontier, wouldn't it be?
Queen of the wild frontier. Yes. Oh, my.
Mercy.
So what, man?
No.
Can't you see Rob in a pink hat?
As long as it wasn't the ones they were wearing a couple of years ago.
Right? It was so funny because he was doing this whole show about the fact that, that David Crockett was a congressman, right?
That hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hat.
Yeah. That hat, Rob.
So it's from the David Crockett party, And if he's going to be a congressman, he's not going for this Republican thing or this Democrat thing. He's going to start the David Crockett party.
Excellent. Get some video of him shooting some muzzleloaders. I'm telling you, we'll
cannon
make it
in the
into a
wheelbarrow.
gun grab. Yes, absolutely. That'll be great.
Susan's been sending me message after message after message. I was just able to get that loaded very quickly while we were on break. I wasn't able to read through all the messages, so I'm sure there's a link where we could buy that. But
by the end of the show, there will be.
Right. So all of a sudden, there's like a spike in the sales of these things. Like, hey, what happened? All of a sudden, we have to ship a lot of these out. What's going on?
Yeah, we don't know what that is. Yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
Anyway, let's. Wow. Last thing I'm going to say on this is that I am not an attorney. I did not stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. I cannot give legal advice. What you do is totally up to you. However, please be responsible no matter what you do. And if somebody posts a no gun sign, they don't want your gun in there, it also means they really don't want your money that much.
Has anyone been spotted carrying? Like somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I see that you're carrying," or anything like this?
Well, think about this. How many people have you seen carrying? Honestly, there are very few people that you notice because everybody's got so much stuff hanging off their belt anyhow. There's flashlights and knives and phones and just, everything that you don't notice. I probably have seen less than what I can count on both my hands in the time that Ohio has had concealed carry, that I could pick somebody out of a crowd that has a gun, and they were just doing it extremely badly.
Right.
And in Ohio, it's like 1 in 14 adults has a concealed carry license. So there's a lot of people that potentially have guns. A lot.
I was spotted once by a friend of mine. I just got a crossbreed holster, and I think I had the belt clips that went over the belt.
Yep.
And he noticed those. Like, I had a shirt tucked in. He's like, "Hey, man, I see that you got that crossbreed holster." I'm like, "Oh my God, does it make me look fatter? Can you tell? Can you see?" And he said, "Not if you know what you're looking for. You're not going to know." So, but my standard, my canned answer, or excuse me, my chambered answer to if I'm carrying and someone sees that my shirt's sticking out a little far on one side, and they say, "Hey, your shirt's sticking out. It's a little uneven. What are you trying to conceal?" I tell them it's my colostomy bag, and I think it's leaking.
Insulin pump.
There we go. That might be more legit.
It's more none your business there, dude. HIPAA laws.
Exactly. It's my colostomy bag is full and leaking. So no more questions after that.
On that note.
Okay, let me get this up here. And, whoops. Dana, checking in from Twitter, he's right. He's getting all of them in there. I guess I never noticed signs because no guns signs have no force of law here. Well, they don't here either, Dana, but with the traveling I used to do, and I still do to an extent, I still try to honor their request. If they don't want my money, they don't want my money. The big one, and they did reverse their policy because of a lot of people like me, not because of me, used to be that among the rules of the house at Waffle House was no guns. And they changed that several years ago. There is no, among the rules of the house on Waffle House, there is no guns anymore. And I've yet to see, and even when there was a no guns in the rules of the house of Waffle House, I did not ever see on the door of a Waffle House a no gun sign. And I've yet to see one in my travels. And believe me, I love eating at Waffle House. It's not a high class place to eat, but it is by and large decent food. It's fast, it's friendly, and it's inexpensive.
It's a tourist destination.
It absolutely is. I brought. I went on trips with both my kids over the last couple of years, and as soon as we got far enough south to go to a Waffle House and we'd see one on the side of the road, I'm like, hey, we're hitting the Waffle House. You know, like when I brought my daughter to Nashville, we woke up at a hotel right next to a Waffle House. We had breakfast. We went to the Nashville Armory, got her some pepper spray, and then took her to college.
There you go. Roderick says, I went to a nice wedding last year in Indiana. One person open carried. I found out that there were 6 carrying concealed, including me. That was a safe wedding. And I've said this a lot this past week. And this is specifically, and I don't have it loaded in this set, but if we were on the Bullet, I could just pop a button and have it running right now. Speaking of, we had last week, we had the guest on, Lauren from Arizona, when that senator said, well, I'm in front of these people and I don't want a bunch of armed people in front of me all the time. Look, when I spoke in Phoenix at Gun Rights Policy Conference, there was 1,100 armed people in one room. Guess where I felt the absolute safest? When I was looking out over 1,100 people, the vast majority of which were armed, I felt incredibly safe.
I was telling them Betty White stories.
Yeah.
That's how safe she felt.
Yeah.
Do you remember being at the NRA convention? We're in a single room. It's got multiple floors, so I'm guessing 10 to 15,000, probably more than half are carrying.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be, I don't know how many are going to be in Houston, but it's going to be that way this year in Houston. I would imagine that the Houston, with permitless carry now being in effect in Houston, certainly the NRA is not going to want gun-free zone signs up at their venue.
Well, that's one of the reasons why the NRA has only certain venues that they go to, because they will not have the NRA annual convention at a venue that has no gun signs. And so they are limited into which locations will allow that, and are big enough to host the 80,000 members who show up of a weekend.
Well, and that's a big reason why Gun Rights Policy Conference is going back to Dallas this year, is because they can fit us, and because they do not put up the I think it's the 30-06 and 30-7 signs are what they're called in Dallas, in Texas. So,
though sometimes SAF does go to anti-gun cities just to prove a point.
We've been to Chicago.
Yeah, they kind of flip around a little bit of all that. So they want the Chicagoans to see that there are this many pro-gun people who are willing to come to their...
They'll go to the belly of the beast. Yeah. They've been to San Francisco before.
Right.
Yeah. All right, well, we burned up another segment. Big shock, we like to talk. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the news. So let's head to break. We're going to hear from somebody. I think it's going to be JPFO. Let's hear from JPFO. We'll be right back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Hey, and welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Second Amendment Foundation. I've been doing this as an employee of the SAF for a year and a half now. I still almost slip up. I swear it's like what is it? The Anchorman. I say things almost automatically. Let's go ahead and get started here. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer vetoed legislation that would have required county clerks to keep processing concealed pistol licenses during state-declared or locally declared emergencies. I will tell you this. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary emergency for a government. It's just like a temporary tax. It'll never go away.
Now, what Gretchen Whitmer said was that the measure that the Republicans were trying to push through, that she was against, that it would have mandated that clerks issue licenses without regard to the scope or the gravity of the emergency or whether in-person services would jeopardize clerks. So, I mean, we're just coming off of COVID, where for a very long time they sent people home and told them to work from home. And so there were states that they stopped accepting concealed carry licenses for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months in a stretch. And so there are people who couldn't get temporary emergency licenses. They couldn't get concealed carry licenses. They had stalkers and ex-husbands and ex-wives and all of this kind of things that would indeed jeopardize their lives.
Yes.
But that's neither here nor there, because since they didn't define the scope of this, and it's like, that can't be the first thing that happens is, oh, well, we're just going to stop all services that we don't like.
I absolutely agree.
Amanda, if someone finds the job of being a county bureaucrat too stressful, there's the door. If you as an administrator can't manage the demands of the job, there's the door. Lots of other people do way more risky things on a routine basis. If you can't manage the risk, you're the wrong person for the job. And I submit that applies to Governor Whitmer.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie?
The COVID, I think, was as an excuse was the greatest thing and the worst thing, because it's, if you're not wearing a mask, you're killing people, and it's the greatest excuse because, well, we couldn't do this because of COVID. We couldn't do this. We couldn't fingerprint people. We can't process permits. So if you're going, 8, 9, 10 months without processing permits, what's going to happen is this. They're going to be 8 to 10 months behind, and they're not going to get permits processed in any sort of a timely fashion. So it really is the greatest excuse to not get anything done ever again.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. These are, at times, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not kidding, at times these are life and death things. Ask Carol Bound. Oops, you can't, can you? Right. There's no excuse for stopping these. There's absolutely no excuse. I will say this, Governor Whitmer, when you send your security detail home because of COVID, then it's possibly okay to tell these clerks they cannot issue permits. Possibly.
See, I think the rebuttal to this should be that they go back and say, okay, I hear you. So we're going to pass constitutional carry, then no permit will be needed.
Exactly. If you can't process permits, then constitutional carry is in effect. I like the way you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that completely makes sense.
I'll tell you, I'm hearing some of the constitutional carry opponents are not against constitutional carry as such. They're against the fact that they are losing revenue.
Right.
It was a revenue generator, and now what are they going to do? This is how they funded this. This is how they funded that. Literally, that's what they're saying. And I'm like, so you're saying that we should take a constitutionally protected right and dismantle it because you'd get $2?
That was a big thing in Indiana this year. That was a huge thing in Indiana this year.
It's repulsive. Absolutely repulsive.
You know, I mean, they sit here and they tell us that our gas taxes are supposed to go to the roads and the bridges, and
right.
And I don't know where you live, but where I live, I don't know if the money quite gets there. I'm sure, you know, the anti-gun folks want to add extra taxes because the gun owners should pay for all the violence and blah, and all that sort of nonsense. It's not going to get there, and obviously the money's going to other places.
Yeah. I want to move on to our next story if we could. What is the largest employer in Seattle? Well, Amazon employs over 80,000 employees at its Washington State corporate headquarters. The corporation and its employees have been enthusiastic backers of gun control as well as the defund the police movement, including in its backing of $350,000 of donations to former Mayor Jenny Durkin and her anti-gun and police policies. What do you get with these policies? Rising crime, and in particular, violent crime. Amazon has begun moving employees out of the corporate headquarters. Wonder why? Because of rising violent crime. Big shock, huh?
Well, no. Do you remember that, and it was on this very podcast, Paul, we had a news story about government employees in City Hall in Seattle demanding that they get armed police escort from City Hall to public transport, that the cops stay there until the public transport comes, and escort through the parking lots because it's too dangerous to walk downtown in Seattle at night. Amazon, fund your own security. You built this mess, you lay in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that doesn't scream out that there are two tiers of people, there are the people that should be protected and everybody else. And it's the same thing happened with that Senator Contreras in Arizona, where he kind of laid it out and said, hey, listen, I don't want a gun to protect myself. You shouldn't have one either. This is now just extending to the elites at Amazon who have all the power and whatever, blah, blah, blah. They want to have police protection. They don't want to worry about protection themselves, and they live in a bad area because they've encouraged the bad area by taking services away.
Dana says, don't get me started on Whitmer and her fix the damn roads. 4 years later, and they are worse. Dana, if she gets reelected, there won't be any roads. Yeah. And it won't be like the Back to the Future movies where roads where we're going, we don't need any roads. Roads where Michigan is going, there won't be any roads. You'll need the big lifted four-wheelers because you can't get there in a Cadillac anymore. All right, let's see. Next story, you want to get your a light under your backside. This one will do it. California Assemblyman Jim Cooper is not a gun-friendly legislator. He left a loaded handgun in a carry-on bag while going through TSA at the Sacramento airport. Cooper, so far, has been given a pass by law enforcement. If he was not a politician, he would be facing both California law jail time, fine, or both. And let's be realistic, both. And federal law, fines between $3,000 and $10,000. Let's be realistic, jail time there as well. Instead, the firearm was stored while he was on his trip and returned to him on his return to Sacramento. Can you say privilege, boys and girls? And yes, this Jim Cooper does have a D behind his name.
Oh, I'm shocked, Paul. I thought he was a man of the people. Okay, so everybody now who gets hammered by the TSA or the police in that district of Central California gets to say, "Excuse me, Judge, I'm going to appeal this unless I get the sentence that Assemblyman Cooper got."
Well, it wasn't that a sentence. They didn't prosecute.
No.
Exactly.
The TSA said, "Here, let me store this for you. Let me hold this for you, and I'll give it back to you when you get back." I mean, Rob put snap caps in my suitcase that I got. We need security over here. We need security over here. So
yeah, if that would have been Charlie Cook, Rob Morse, Amanda Suffecool, or Paul Lathrop, we would have been hog-tied and we'd have been put under the jail waiting for arraignment.
I was practically strip searched right there at TSA because there was snap caps in my suitcase.
Mercy. So 2 minutes ago, I said we have two different classes. This guy's part of one of the elite class, obviously.
Yes, obviously.
Parlays right into that. Speaking of traveling and air flight, when I was heading to Dallas for AmCon, I was going to be carrying because we were going to Texas, and I put my speed strips, because I carry a revolver. My revolver was locked in a secure container and it was unloaded. I put my speed strips in the Ziploc where I put my toiletries, and the TSA did catch them, and they give me a firm talking to, and said that I should not do that again. It took about...
But they're empty.
No,
right?
The speed strips did have a couple of rounds in them.
Oh, oops, yes, okay, my bad.
Yes. And I did have a box of extra ammo as well, so I had to put all that, my speed strip ammo in the box of ammo. So, yeah, it took about 8 or 12 minutes to kind of get through and explain to the TSA. I'm like, look, if you want to take them, they're fine. He's like, you've got loose ammunition. I'm like, it's not really loose ammunition because they're in a little piece of hard rubber plastic, you know. But he didn't quite see it my way, but he let it go.
Yeah.
By the way,
don't correct him and tell him it's not a clip, it's a magazine, right? Yeah.
Right.
You know, what are you talking about? It's a magazine.
I'm flying through Dallas, and for some reason I end up going through TSA again, and there's a guy wearing his holster. He goes, I checked my gun. I don't have to take this off. And I go, good for you.
There you go.
He's got a point.
I got to Vegas one time and found bullets in my backpack. So then I was like, well,
did you start with bullets in your backpack?
Probably. We'll just say probably. So I left them with the Gideon Bible in the drawer.
Oh my God. I went to Front Sight in 2004, and I was not gun savvy back then. I had my big revolver with me, you know, 357, and I had some spare ammo that I don't remember where it was in my suitcase, but they did take it to the Las Vegas police at the airport in Vegas, and they said they would take it as a kind donation to the police department.
Okay.
So I'm happy to donate, 4 rounds of ammunition to the Vegas Police Department.
Right.
All right. Well, let's do this. We're again, big shock. We're late. I want to try and get the show in under 90 minutes, so we need to jump off to another break. When we come back, I want to do our defensive gun use segment. And for those of you who may be new to the show, each week we talk about 2 stories where somebody uses their gun to defend their life or the life of an innocent person. So, we're going to step off to break. When we come back, we'll do our defensive gun use segment. Hang on, we'll be right back, everybody, right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Anybody want to volunteer to take the story from Israel?
Sure.
Okay, go for it, Rob.
This is out of Beersheba. Defensive gun use are not strictly limited to the United States. The values from the Second Amendment are recognized by governments around the world, even though they may not be stated in writing. Certainly not in English. At about 4:15 p.m., an Israeli Arab rammed his car into a man riding a bicycle on the street. The impact unfortunately killed the rider. The terrorist then got out of his vehicle and began stabbing bystanders with a large fixed-blade knife. Paramedics in the area reported that one woman was pronounced dead at the scene. 4 others were taken to a nearby medical center, 2 in critical condition, 2 in moderate condition. A second woman was later pronounced dead. A third was later reported to have died. Cell phone video showed the terrorist standing in the street with the knife in his hand. A nearby bus driver exited the bus and neutralized the terrorist. He's seen kicking the knife away from the prone terrorist. The terrorist was still alive at the time. The terrorist later died at the scene. Others were seen in the video with handguns in hand, looking around the area for other bad guys, while others can be seen aiding the stabbing victims with first aid. Police were searching for a suspected compatriot. The attacker was identified as an Israeli citizen and a Bedouin. Hamas and other terrorist groups praised the attack but did not claim responsibility.
The United States is one of the very, very few countries, I believe. I've recently read there are 3 countries, including the United States, that recognize an individual right to possess firearms. I do not know the other 2, although I would suspect one of them now is Ukraine.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're coming around.
Well, depending on what happens over the next period of time, let's face it, I wouldn't want to be a Russian general about now. They've got a fairly short lifespan recently, so Israel does have a right to own them. I've heard that it's not as easy to carry them as it is to own them in Israel. I'm somewhat of an expert in the United States, but certainly not for Israel or anywhere else in the world.
Who's going to read the next story? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, this sounded like it started off as a mass stabbing, and turned into a self-defense situation where someone stopped a mass stabbing with a firearm.
Exactly.
I can
All
do
right,
the next
I
one.
will. Oh,
You want to
okay.
do it?
Rocks, paper, scissors.
So, cannabis has been legalized in many states and is a cash-heavy transaction. As such, we've seen many stores being targeted by the lowlifes in society. Most stores take security very seriously, both in the perimeter of the store, 8 to 10 foot fences, bright lights and such, and the entry of the stores secured by locked doors. In less than 3 months, there have been 77 cannabis store robberies in the state of Washington alone. Euphorium, I don't know what that is.
Euphorium is the store that was robbed.
Okay. So Euphorium also employs an ID checker at the door. In the bar business, it's called a bouncer. Okay. Paul, stop blowing my face up because I'm trying to read a camera over here and I'm trying to focus on this and I hate it. Charlie, take over. This is what I'm like trying to...
We'll have my face up there. Does that help?
I'm just like the old person trying to read this. At 7:45 on a Thursday, a perpetrator grabbed an employee returning from break from behind and put him in a headlock and held a gun to his head and walked into the door and told the door's security, "This is a robbery." "Are you serious?" was the reply. When the robber reiterated that he was, the ID checker pulled his gun and fired. Both the ID checker and the other employee are taking some time off. The ID checker also works next door at a gun shop, Rev Arms. This wasn't the only incident in the Seattle area. A day earlier, another robber was shot and killed when they fled the scene and was found in someone else's backyard and killed in a shootout with the police.
I'm gonna say this: the bouncer or ID checker at the door. That's the hostage shot. That's something I have practiced a lot in training, and I do when I go to the range. I practice that outside of training. That's not an easy shot under range conditions with a timer, let alone real life conditions where if you miss, your friend is going to die, and oh, by the way, the bad guy is next one going to be shooting. So you better get that shot right. You better get it right the first time. And good on this guy. I mean, a fantastic job.
It's both better and worse than that, Paul. 9 out of 10 of these cannabis store robberies are committed by armed robbers. That's the ugly side. Here's the good side. You're working at the door. You go, "Man, I'm just taking tickets. Go on, walk on in. The cash register is right over there." You still have an individual in the store who's facing an immediate, lethal, unavoidable threat. You don't need a fast draw. Here, I'm following you. I'm just here to help you carry the bags. You can shoot them from behind. We don't think about shooting bad guys from behind because, oh, they're running away. They're no longer a threat. Except in this case, there's a hostage. They are.
And when they're running in, not out.
Yeah.
There you go.
They're forcing their way in.
if they're taking the hostage on the way out, yeah, as long as that life is in jeopardy.
Sure. So here's a couple things that I pick up. First of all, cannabis is buying cannabis from these stores is it's a cash-heavy transaction, which means even though the people are using cannabis, they don't want the government to keep or their credit card company or their bank to keep track of where they're spending their money. Which I know it's John Richard's thing, but it's something to think about, right? The second thing is, in 3 months, 77 cannabis store robberies, not other robberies. That is 25 a month, which is about 1 a day. It seems to be something pretty regular that's happening, and to bring it back to our earlier story, it is happening where? In Seattle.
Washington.
Yeah.
Back to, we've defunded the police. We've let the bad guys run rampant. They get to do whatever they want to do.
Well, and let's take it to...
And we just told you don't need many bullets in your magazine.
The government is pressuring banks not to give loans to cannabis stores because federally, marijuana is still an illegal drug. And so the medical marijuana and the recreational marijuana stores are feeling the same pressure the firearms companies are through Operation Choke Point. Banks don't want to do business with them because the banks are feeling pressure from the federal government. That's why it's cash heavy.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that completely makes sense.
So, all right, it's been a while. Let me go over and see if we've got... No, we're still caught up on... come on, everybody. We're not getting a whole lot of comments in here, so, let's get with it. Let's do this. Let's go ahead. We're going to step off to our final break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about what we've been doing with the media we've been producing. So we're going to step aside to our final break. When we come back, we'll wrap the whole thing up and let you know what you can expect from our media. Hang on. Right back right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong-house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
Welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. What we normally do right about this time is, before I throw to Rob, I'm going to say that John Richardson, one of our compatriots, is not able to be here tonight, but I am going to encourage you, go check out his blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money. That's at onlygunsandmoney.com. He does write some fantastic stuff, including, if you're interested in what's going on with the NRA, that's where you find it out. That's where I find out most of the stuff I find out about what's going on behind the scenes with the NRA. That's where I get it. Rob, what's been going on with your blog, man? Slowfax.
Thank you. The media distorts the truth.
No.
Tell us that thank God for UNSAF. The media tells us that mass murder is common and armed defense is rare. That's an inversion of the truth. Our tiny screens lie to us. Well, what we see on the phone and what we see from the giant corporations who put those lies into the public. That article is called Clear Thinking About Taxing Guns at slowfax.wordpress.com. Also, I'm going to put a pitch in for our compatriot. I did a guest appearance with Dan Waz. His video podcast is called The Loaded Mic. And we talked about school safety. Give it a listen. Give it a watch. Amanda, Charlie?
Well,
Go ahead, Amanda.
I'll go. Women for Gun Rights on Friday, I had Julie Ferris of the Aegis Authority out of California on, and she is doing amazing things in the state of California with guns and education and that. So I'm still working on the lineup for the Women for Gun Rights, and I did take my Women for Gun Rights signs to Columbus and got a couple state reps to have their pictures taken with that too. So it was kind of entertaining, kind of fun, and people are like, "Wow, you're a gun person." I'm like, "Yep," and I'm a sign carrying gun person.
Gun person.
Charlie?
That's great. I have a Fifth Tuesday of the Month show coming out tomorrow, because we do have a 5th Tuesday in the month. And my show is going to have passengers Mike and Big Keith from the Gun Experiment. They are from the Newburgh, New York area. And this is a big deal for them because they've never put their faces out publicly. So this is it's kind of a big reveal, which I'm excited about. That's going to be coming out tomorrow morning. Tomorrow night, I am going to be doing a show with a live show with Matt Mallory, and our guest is going to be Rick Ector from Legally Armed in Detroit. And I have been making videos for AmmoLand, kind of opposite Dan Was. Dan's making videos for AmmoLand, putting them out at the beginning of the week. I'm making videos for AmmoLand, and I'm putting them out at the end of the week. So please make sure you check those out at the AmmoLand YouTube channel. Paul, tell us about the Bullet.
Well, before I do that, so you're not only are you the Bizarro Tom Knighton, you're also the Bizarro Dan Was.
Dan Was. Exactly.
Okay. So, what I want to point out, we just had this past Saturday. We had an amazing weekend version of the Bullet. Beth Alcazar, Dan Was, and Tony Simon got to. Yeah, I got Tony Simon to talk politics, and it was an amazing show. It's right here on the same. Just if you once you're done watching us in about 5-6 minutes, go back and go back and watch that one. A really good show, about an hour and 3 minutes. Really had a great time with that one. When I went around the week in review and just had a blast. I'm really looking forward to getting those three together again. Looking like maybe in April I might be able to get Tony and Beth and Dan all together on the same show again. We'll have to see how the scheduling works, but that was a fun one, and I would really encourage you, if you are watching us live, go check that one out next. If you're listening to us on podcast, go check out the podcast feed for the Bullet and pull up the show for the 26th. It was a fantastic show. So that's what I have on my end. Let me go check out. No, we're still good there. What else do we got going on the show notes? I think we're all caught up there too. Hey, we're going to be out of here a couple minutes early. How about that? Do you want to recommend that everybody go check out, if you're a member of Facebook, and there are people that are not, and I'm okay with that, but if you are on Facebook and you are so inclined, go check out our Facebook listeners group. Just search Facebook for Polite Society Podcast Listeners. We do get members that come in there all the time. I don't get there as often as I should, but I do post things in there every once in a while, and members do have great discussions in there. Just search for Polite Society Podcast Listeners on Facebook. That does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, that ends the recording. I'm going to go ahead and shut the streams down now for everybody that was watching and everybody that commented. Thank you. You folks make our jobs much easier when you comment, and we've got something to work off of. Please do come join us join me the rest of the week at 5 p.m. Central Time for the Bullet, and come join us next week, Monday, at 6 p.m. Central Time for another edition of Polite Society. Trish Hofer from the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association, will be our guest. Thanks for watching.